Hare Krishna. Welcome to our evening katha. Again, it is our sincere hope that all of you have been safe all this time and increasing your Krishna consciousness, reading more, studying more. And today is a very special day, disappearance of Sripad Shyamananda Pandit. So we'll discuss all about Shyamananda Pandit today. So since we're discussing the disciples of the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so we have a beautiful song where many of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's disciples and followers are mentioned. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More. Toma bina ke dayalo Jagat sansare. Toma bina ke dayalo Jagat sansare. Patita pavana hetu Tava avatara. Patita pavana hetu Tava avatara. Mosa mo patita Prabhu na paibe ara. Mosa mo patita Prabhu na paibe ara. Ha ha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi. Ha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi. Kripa bala kana koro ami bado dukhi. Kripa bala kana koro ami bado dukhi. Daya koro Sitapati Advaita Gosai. Daya koro Sitapati Advaita Gosai. Tava kripa bole pai Chaitanya Nitai. Tava kripa bole pai Chaitanya Nitai. Haha Swarup Sanatana Rupa Raghunatha. Haha Swarup Sanatana Rupa Raghunatha. Bhatta Juga Sri Jivaha Prabhu Lokanatha. Bhatta Juga Sri Jivaha Prabhu Lokanatha. Daya Koro Sri Acharya Prabhu Srinivasa. Daya Koro Sri Acharya Prabhu Srinivasa. Ramachandra Sangha Mange Narottamo Dasa. Ramachandra Sangha Mange Narottamo Dasa. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More Sriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. So again, we welcome you to our evening katha, and our sincere wish is that all of you are well and increasing your Krishna consciousness. Today is a very special day, the disappearance of Sripad Shyamananda Pandit, who was one of the most important preachers in Orissa in the period after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's disappearance. All these dates come on our calendar. We should know something about the person, not that just a name on the calendar and we just read it and so it's so-and-so disappearance day, but we should know something about them, so we're going to explain a little about the glories of Shyamananda Pandit today. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Saparandiyam Adadana Srinandantai Vridam Yache Puna Puna Srimad Rupa Padambujo Dulisyam Janma Janmani Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Panchakalpatrubhishta Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. So, Shyamananda, he appeared somewhere in northern Orissa. It was in Midnapur district, which is Bengal, but at that time it was in Orissa. And his father's name was Krishna Mandal, and his Krishna Mandal's wife's name was Kurika. So, and he was from a Shadgopa community. It describes Shadgopa means they deliver, there's a Shudra community, and they deliver milk products to the people. But even though he wasn't born in a very high-class family, from his childhood he was always attracted to learning and studying philosophy. And when anybody would come and tell the stories of Lord Chaitanya, because they were just not far from, just across the border from Bengal, so many people would come on their way to Puri and tell stories about Lord Chaitanya. He would learn those stories and he would repeat those stories. And then he wanted to learn Sanskrit, so his parents, seeing his aptitude and seeing that he wasn't at all following their line, but that he was very anxious for philosophy and like that, they got him to study philosophy and Sanskrit and so many things. And thus he thought that they also agreed that since he's in the line of spiritual life, that for really making advancement in spiritual life, one should accept a guru. But hearing all the stories about the different associates of Lord Chaitanya, somehow he was very much attracted to Hridaya Chaitanya. So he decided he would accept Hridaya Chaitanya, who lived in Ambika Kalna, which is not far from Navadvip. You get the train, you go back about, I think it's 3 stations back. There's Bhagnapara and Saptagram, and then I think comes Ambika Kalna. Very wonderful place. But his mother was very worried that was so far away. But then he argued there's so many devotees going back and forth on pilgrimage from going to Puri and then returning, so he could return with them, with some pilgrims, and thus be protected like that. So finally they decided to agree. So he started off toward Ambika Kalna. On the way, they passed the village of Abhiram Thakur. When he met Abhiram Thakur, he fell into a complete trance of ecstasy, so ecstatic to meet one of Mahaprabhu's close associates. And then he traveled on to Kalna. In Kalna, it wasn't very hard. Hridaya Chaitanya was very famous. His guru was Gauridas Pandit. They were both very famous in the village. So immediately everyone very happily directed him to the temple of Gaur-Nitai. Now this is a very special Gaur-Nitai because Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, in their travels, they came to Ambika Kalna and they were invited by Gauridas Pandit to stay in his house and accept hospitality from him. So one day, after a few days of remaining with Gauridas Pandit, they begged permission to leave, and Gauridas said, no, you cannot leave. I'm enjoying so much ecstasy in your association. How can you leave? And this way, a big argument was going, no, we have to go. We have our Sankirtan mission to complete. So finally he said, all right, let me make some deities, because deity is non-different from yourself, right? The Lord agreed, yes, not different. So then he called one carver, and these are probably the only deities that Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda posed for. So very, very exquisitely beautiful deities, but very difficult to get picture. So, Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, they posed for these deities. When the deities were finished, then Gauridas Pandit said to the lords that these deities are non-different from you. And the Lord said, yes. Then let the deities go and preach and you stay here in my house. So then Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda froze and became deities, and the deities became Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. He said, no, you're cheating me. No, the deities will stay, you will stay, the deities will go. Then they switched back, and then Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda tried to go again. No, you're cheating me. This way they changed back and forth, and he was no longer aware which was the deity, which was Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda. So then he accepted the deities and let Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda go. Sometime later he had a disciple named Hridayananda. And he went on pilgrimage and he left Hridayananda to take care of the deities. Now Hridayananda, it came Gaur Purnima time, he didn't have any particular order from his guru to do a festival, but he thought it's Lord Chaitanya's appearance, there should be a festival. It wasn't common yet that there was Gaur Purnima festival. So he called all the Vaishnavas and made this big festival, and big kirtan was going on, a lot of noise was going on. And Gauridas Pandit came back from his pilgrimage. He saw all this hula halla going on in his temple. He just wanted to come back and worship his lords and be happy. He said, what is all this? I didn't give you any order to do this. Why? He said, oh, Guru Maharaj, I'm sorry. I just thought it'd be nice to have. Then you take your festival somewhere else. So they went out to a field nearby, and they're having roaring kirtan. And Hridayananda was having static kirtan. Everybody was rolling on the ground, pulling their hair, crying. And Hridayananda, Gauridas Pandit, he cooked for his deities. He came to the deity room, he opened the curtain, and Gaur-Nitai were not there on the altar. And he said, oh my God, what is this? And then he looked, he saw Gaur-Nitai were dancing in the kirtan. They had left the temple to go join the kirtan. So Gauridas Pandit grabbed a stick and he came running. When they saw Gauridas Pandit running with a stick, then at least Lord Chaitanya, he jumped into Hridayananda's heart. And nobody could understand, nobody knew that Gaur-Nitai was dancing with them, and they couldn't understand why Gauridas Pandit is running around with a stick and why he's shouting at Hridayananda, you get back on the altar, you get back on the altar. So they went back on the altar, and therefore at that temple they never give you long darshan. You just get short little darshans because he's afraid they may walk off the pujaris are afraid they may walk off the altar again. So from that time, since Lord Chaitanya hid in his heart, we can't imagine how pure he must have been that Lord Chaitanya took up residence in his heart. So he became known as Hridaya Chaitanya. Seeing Hridaya Chaitanya, he immediately fell at Hridaya Chaitanya's feet and begged him to accept him as disciple. And Hridaya Chaitanya was very happy to accept him as a disciple and began to train him in so many ways and nourish him in spiritual life. Then Shyamananda, we missed one piece. When he was born, his parents, they had several children before that they died. They were either born dead or they died shortly after death. So they named him Dukhi, hoping that the god of death, seeing that this person is so unhappy, he will not bother him. So he was named Dukhi, and Hridaya Chaitanya gave him the name Krishnadas. So he became known as Dukhi Krishnadas. So Dukhi Krishnadas presented one time that he had a desire, as all good sadhus, to go on pilgrimage. So then he went on pilgrimage. He went to so many holy places, Gaya, Prayag, all the different holy places. Even went up to the north part of northern places where usually Gaudiya Vaishnavas don't go, even to the north. Then on the way back, he stopped in Puri to see the places of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, then Navadvip, and finally he returned to Orissa to his home, where he met his parents again. They were very happy to see him. Then he returned to Kalna, to Gauridas Pandit. And again he took more. Gauridas was overwhelmed to see him back, embraced him with tears. And again he trained him in spiritual life. And then he told him that actually you should go to Vrindavan, because Jiva Goswami is there. He's the most learned. He can really train you in Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. So with a heavy heart he set out for Vrindavan. On the way he reached Radhakund first, and there he was met by Raghunath Das Goswami and Krishnadas Kaviraj. When they heard that he was a disciple of Hridaya Chaitanya, they were overwhelmed, and they embraced him with tears in their eyes, and they took very nice care of him, and told him that that Dukhi Krishnadas should hurry quickly to Vrindavan and meet Jiva Goswami. So then he hurried to Vrindavan, and he asked for the whereabouts of Jiva Goswami. He found Jiva Goswami and surrendered at his lotus feet, and he gave a letter from his guru that he wanted to study with Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami was overjoyed to receive a letter from Hridaya Chaitanya. This was so much ecstasy for him. So he was very happy to have a disciple of Hridaya Chaitanya in his school. So then he joined Srinivasacharya and Narottam, who were also there. And Jiva Goswami was very happy. Now he had a team that was competent to do preaching work. He was very happy. So he trained him very nicely, and he trained him in Raganuga Bhajan, and he would go into trance, and he discovered his identity as Kanaka Manjari, and he had some special service to do in the spiritual world, and he would go into these deep trances and elaborate meditations and return to this material world again. Then he asked Jiva Goswami for some special service. So Jiva Goswami said, yes, you should sweep the kunj, because Shamsundar temple is in the Seva Kunj area, so you should sweep the kunjas every day. So he gave me a very humble service. We don't like to, generally sweeper is a very low down service, but he very happily took the service and was sweeping the kunj every day. One time in the Seva Kunj area, Radha and Krishna and all the gopis were doing rasa dance. And somehow that night they just went mad in ecstasy, and everybody was dancing wildly and dancing so wildly, and Radharani was dancing so wildly, she didn't notice that her ankle belt fell off, her nupur. And later they retired from the Ras Leela. And next morning here comes Dukhi Krishnadas doing his service, sweeping. Suddenly he saw this beautiful nupur ankle bracelet, ankle belt bracelet. And he could see it was glowing, and the whole kunj was brilliant with this golden glow. He could understand this is not ordinary thing. And when he reached down to touch it, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, he was just, spiritual charge went through his whole body. Then very carefully he lifted that, he tied it in his cloth, and thought, I will have to return this to its owner. The owner must be someone very special. So he continued sweeping. Then sometime later, Radharani noticed that her ankle bell had fallen off in her ecstasy. So she told Lalita, you have to find this ankle bell. So Lalita Sakhi disguised herself as an old woman, and she went back to the Seva Kunj area, and she was looking around. She saw this fellow sweeping. So she asked him, did you happen to see a very valuable ankle bell? And he said, yes. Is it yours? He said, no, it belongs to my daughter-in-law, because she was playing the part of an old lady. It's not yours then? But you can give it to me. I will give it to my daughter. No. This was very valuable ankle bell. I can only return it to the owner herself. But she's my daughter-in-law. You can give it to me. I'm honest. He said, no. He was very clever. He knew something special was happening. So then Lalita Sakhi took him out of the kunj and went into Radharani's quarters. When he entered into the quarters of Radharani, then suddenly he was stunned in spiritual ecstasy. He fell on the ground and began to cry. And suddenly Lalita Sakhi revealed herself, and he saw the beautiful form of Lalita Sakhi and the beautiful forms of Radharani. And he was just in ecstasy. And then Radharani asked for her ankle bell. He took it out of his cloth. He handed it to Radharani, took it and placed it on his forehead like this, so that it came down and made a mark on his head like this. And then she took one bell and touched her lotus feet and put a little bindu with the dust of her lotus feet. And told him that you have so much love for my Shyam, your name will be Shyamananda. And then she manifested a beautiful deity of Radha and Krishna right from her heart and gave it to Shyamananda to worship. So whenever you go to Shyam Sundar temple, Radha Shyam Sundar downtown, you'll see that pujaris and everyone have a special type of tilak. The leaf part of the tilak is empty because she just put the ankle bell so it fell like that, so it's empty. And there's a chandan colored bindu. You see, the tilak is very similar to Nimbarka tilak, but Nimbarka tilak has a black bindu. This is Shambhanandi tilak. So then everybody began to notice that Dukhi Krishnadas had a new name, and he had a new type of tilak, a bona fide tilak. This is bogus tilak. So it became a big controversy. It was all over the internet that Jiva Goswami has reinitiated Dukhi Krishnadas and given him a new name. He's stolen Hridaya Chaitanya's disciple. All this rumors went through the Vrindavan town. And finally some disciples of Hridaya Chaitanya passing through Vrindavan, they heard these rumors, they saw it was true, that he was now known as Shyamananda. He had the speculation tilak. So they went back to Kalna, they told Hridaya Chaitanya that this is what's going on. Hridaya Chaitanya was very furious. How Jiva Goswami has stolen my disciple and reinitiated him. So immediately wrote a letter to Jiva Goswami. But Jiva Goswami, jumping ahead. Meanwhile, when Jiva Goswami saw this funny tilak and these beautiful deities, he understood something had happened. And Radharani had told him that you take these deities and you worship them, and later you will meet Rasik Murari and you will preach all over Orissa with Rasik Murari. He never heard of Rasik Murari, so he had no idea what she was talking about, but she had given this instruction. So when he had this funny tilak and this new name, then Jiva Goswami asked, and he explained everything to Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami said, very nice. This is the mercy of your spiritual master, Hridaya Chaitanya. So Hridaya Chaitanya wrote a big letter criticizing Jiva Goswami and all this, and he sent 5 of his disciples. They went to the Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami laughed. He said, I'm not even fit to, how can I take him as a disciple? I'm not fit to be his disciple. This is all, this was all the special mercy of Hridaya Chaitanya, that he got this special name and he got this special tilak. And so he sent letter back to the Hridaya Chaitanya saying such. Hridaya Chaitanya wasn't convinced when he got the letter. He said, no, everybody's telling the same thing. Everybody who comes to Vrindavan, that he's stolen him. So he got all the Chosati Mahant, the 64 Mahants, and many other associates, and a big group of them went off on a big long tour of Vrindavan. And they got there to Vrindavan, they challenged Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami said, didn't say anything. He just said he denied stealing it. Again, he said, I'm not even fit to be his disciple, what to speak of taking him as disciple. So then Hridaya Chaitanya said, I will wipe this tilak. He said, where did you get this tilak? He said, Guru Maharaj, it is all your mercy. Where have I given this tilak? Where have I given this name? He said, but Guru Maharaj, it is all your mercy. I'll show you my mercy. He took sand and water and began to rub that tilak mark to wipe it from Shyamananda's face. And the more he wiped, the more it began to glow golden color and shine like anything. And all the Vaishnavas were astonished when they saw this. They were amazed. Then Hridaya Chaitanya realized this is some special mercy. Then Jiva Goswami, who wanted to wait till the proper time, he told the whole story, how Radharani has given this name and Radharani has given this tilak, and all the Vaishnavas, they bowed at the lotus feet of Jiva Goswami. They were sorry for calling him out on speculation tilak and speculation name, and everything was settled very nicely. And the Vaishnavas, many of the Vaishnavas, they stayed with Hridaya Chaitanya and Braj for some time. Then they went on Prikrama. So now the controversy increases even more. So they got, in their travels, they came to Sanket, one place between Barsana and Nandagam. Sanket means signal. There the gopis send signals between between Nandagam and Barsana, where the leelas are going to be in the evening. So there was a group of Ras Leela players there. So this idea of actors playing out Krishna's Leela is going on to at least 500 years. It is not a new thing. So they were displaying the Leela of Radha and Krishna, and Shyamananda just went into the most ecstatic trance, and he rolled on the ground, was crying and pulling his hairs. And Hridaya Chaitanya was looking at this because Gauridas Pandit, in Krishna Leela, he's Subal. So Gauridas and Hridaya Chaitanya, they're in Sakyaras. And he was being overwhelmed with Madhurya Ras. So he became very angry again. He said, what is this nonsense? You're not following us. We're in Sakyaras. But Hridaya Chaitanya, Shyamananda begged his forgiveness, but I cannot change the feeling of my heart. It is an affair of the heart. He said, I cannot change. No, I'm going to reject you as a disciple. And the big argument was there. And finally he decided he would wait for the next day and think about it, what to do. So he meditated all night. He became more angry. In the morning he said, why have you stepped over your guru? He said, no. And then he explained with it. In Madhurya Ras, Sakya Ras is also there, so I'm not leaving out Sakya Ras. This is my eternal identity. What can I do? And Hridaya Chaitanya grabbed a branch and began to beat Shyamananda like anything, till bruises and cuts were coming on his body. He beat him with this branch. And all the Mahants, they stopped him. What are you doing? What are you doing? Stop all this, stop all this. So that night, in his dream, Lord Chaitanya appeared, and he had all this cloth on his body that was all sticking to his body with blood. And Hridaya Chaitanya fell on his feet, Mahaprabhu's feet. What happened? What happened, my dear Lord? What happened? He said, what do you mean what happened? You yourself have done this. Shyamananda is my very dear devotee. So I have protected him from your beating. So I have taken all that beating. We only hear about this with Haridas Thakur, when Mahaprabhu took the beating of the Muslim soldiers. So this is the second instance. You immediately beg forgiveness from him. So in the morning, Hridaya Chaitanya fell at the feet of Shyamananda. Shyamananda fell at the feet of his guru. They embraced, and everything was settled. That yes, it's true that Sakya Rasa is included with it, because all the rasas are included in Madhurya Ras. And this way he was very happy. He said, from now on, you're not my servant, you're my life and soul. And then he returned to Kalna with all the Vaishnavas. So finally, Jiva Goswami, he saw that nobody in Bengal knew the Vaishnava philosophy was being systemized by all the Goswamis in Vrindavan, so nobody knew it. So he needed to get the books to Bengal. These were the three most competent people, Narottam, Srinivas, and Shyamananda. So he had some merchants from Mathura build a special bullock cart with space to lock up all the books and facilities to carry our three saints. And they, with blessings of Jiva Goswami, they started off for Bengal. Then we know somewhere there in Bana Vishnupur, King Bir Hambir stole all the books. We can't imagine the distress of the devotees when they woke in the morning and the books were gone. It's unimaginable. But Srinivas decided, I will stay to find out, you go on. So then Shyamananda and Narottam went together to Ketari Gram, and they stayed there for some time. Then Shyamananda was he told, my duty is to preach in Orissa. So he returned to Orissa. And there he began his preaching. And this was very important because after Mahaprabhu left, then the Mughals had attacked and the dynasty of Maharaj Prataparudra was overturned. Even one, I can't remember his name, better not to remember his name, he attacked the Jagannath temple and they had to take the deity and flee. So everything had been, everything was disturbed. All the great preachers of Mahaprabhu's movement had left. There was a few, Dhyan Chandra and Gopal Guru, but gradually Gaudiya Vaishnava was fading out and the people were becoming very materialistic, and the Muslim Mughals disturbed everyone and tortured people and killed them. So things were in a very distraught condition when our Shyamananda appeared on the scene. And he began he was a very powerful preacher, and he began going around and preaching and reviving. He was most important person for reviving Gaudiya Vaishnavism in Orissa. And he began his then after some time he again paid another visit to Braj, and he met Jiva Goswami. He was very happy to see his guru. His guru had already heard about his great preaching, how he's revitalizing the preaching of Gaudiya Vaishnavism in Puri. His guru was very happy to see him and told him to hurry back and continue the preaching work. Then on the way back he stopped. He heard everybody was going to the Ketari Gram festival, so he went to Ketari Gram on the way. Then he stopped in Kalna again, then he came back to Orissa. And again in Orissa he began his preaching in a very heavy way. That's when he stayed in one village in North Bengal, and the son of the king of that place was very much spiritually inclined. So he became the disciple of and the king and queen were also very spiritually inclined. They became the disciples, and since he was a king, he also became Chaitanya Das, just like King Bir Hambir also became Chaitanya Das, and their son became Rasikananda. But he's more famously known as Rasik Murari. And then remember that Radharani had told you preached with Rasik Murari. So they preached all over Orissa, and then there was one fellow named Damodar, who was a great Mayavadi, big learned scholar and philosopher. And Rasik Murari was anxious that somehow he get association of Shyamananda. So they met Damodar, and many days, for 15 days they had debate. And finally Damodar was defeated and he became the disciple. So with these two, Rasikananda and Damodar, he began his preaching like anything. And then in some village they were having Harinam Sankirtan. He was very famous. He had a special type of kirtan called Reneti Kirtan, just like Narottam was Pajavali, then this was Reneti. and there was one Muslim soldier named Sher Khan, and seeing the Vaishnavas blissfully chanting made him furious, and he rode his horse into the middle of them and broke up their kirtan party and prohibited them from doing this. So next day Shyamananda, he got more people together, and again they did ecstatic kirtan. And Sher Khan again, he became this really infuriated him that he'd already given the order. This time he became violent. He began to break the mridangas and beat the people. Then suddenly Shyamananda began to chant in a very high voice, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna. And suddenly the Muslim soldiers, they began to vomit blood, and Sher Khan saw he was vomiting blood, and their beards were catching on fire. They ran from that place. They immediately went to the river and put out the fire in their beards. And the next day, Sher Khan came and fell at the feet of Shyamananda and said, last night a golden divinity appeared in my dream, and he told me, you should know there's no difference between who you call Allah and who the Hindus worship, and you have mistreated my devotees. I'm very angry with you. I'm going to you will be finished unless you get take initiation from that Shyamananda. So that golden divinity told me that I'm not different from the God of the Hindus, and he told me to come, so I'm begging you for initiation. So he gave Sher Khan initiation. So then he established a beautiful Radha Shyam Sundar temple in a place in northern Orissa called Gopi Ballapur. And I have been there. They have beautiful deities there. This is the peat of Shyamananda, the Shyamanandi Vaishnavas. This is their peat. He established this beautiful deity of Radha Shyam Sundar there and Gopi Ballapur, and he preached all around and converted many people to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and he was the main person after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's disappearance. He was the main person to revive Gaudiya Vaishnavas in Bengal. Then, there was one thing. When Mahaprabhu chastised Hridaya Chaitanya for beating Shyamananda, he said, you can only rectify this situation by performing 12 festivals in Braj. So in this way, Hridaya Chaitanya and all the Vaishnavas, they collected, and they performed 12 big festivals, Dol Yatra and Julan Yatra, and so many different festivals. They collected and performed all these festivals. Then Hridaya Chaitanya returned to Kalna. So gradually he had very nice disciples in a place in northern Orissa called Narsinghpur. He went there to Narsinghpur, and while in Narsinghpur he got the news that Hridaya Chaitanya had left his body. He was completely devastated. He was about to practically leave his body on hearing this news. But somehow the Vaishnavas begged him to stay. Then he stayed for some time, and then he got the news that Damodar had also left this world. But he never recovered from the shock of Damodar leaving. And after that he became very ill.
Who's Damodar?
Damodar was his disciple that he made, the Mayavadi who he converted. And he preached with Rasik Murari. So he was devastated. So finally they realized that he was going to leave, so there was a big kirtan, and he left this world, and Rasik Murari made a beautiful samadhi for him there in Shringpur, and every year, throughout the year, they do 12, in honor of those 12 festivals, they perform those 12 festivals in Nishringpur. So this deity in Radha Shyam Sundar temple in Vrindavan, the actual original deity of Shyamananda Prabhu is a small deity on the right side. You see there's a big deity there. We discussed the other day that was the deity of Baladev Vidyabhushan, because he also took was in the Shyamananda line. But the smaller deity on the right side of the lotus feet of the big Shyamananda, that is the original deity that Shyamananda was given. Deities are given by Srimati Radharani herself. So this is a very special temple, always one of the most famous temples of Vrindavan. So now I hope you know something about Shyamananda. I know many things. I didn't know this. I had never heard the story about Sher Khan. So we'll put our voice to rest here. And how many people are there?
Right now 75.
7. Was more than 100. Okay. So anyway, we'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much. And Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.